Check. All right. I think we can get started again. This is going to be a pretty heavy session, so we have the same ground rules. Please use the raise your hand option. Please don't use the text on Meetpad, the text chat on Meetpad, unless you really think that the sidebar is warranted. Please take your chat onto the Etherpad. It's helpful for everybody, especially me, because I'll be compiling notes at the end of it and sharing it with the rest of the community that's not here today. That said, I think Greg, you put in this question, so I can give you a couple of minutes to explain what this was about, and then we can take go around the room.
Yes, thanks. So my reason behind this topic is I think we get many new contributions with AI-assisted code, and I think that will be our future too. We won't get much contribution, especially from like new seasoned developers without AI assistance. And just by looking at Google, I was ignorant of some of the conversations that happened, but I see other people are also concerned about like people starting an agent in Keystone, for example, and it doesn't know about various things just from the README or whatever, how the contributions should come in. And in contrast, I would say, when I started looking at OpenShell, for example, in the same way using Claude, it was very clear, for example, even just for opening pull requests, right? They have a block to for new developers that a new developer himself or herself or would have to be reviewed by a maintainer. Of course, for OpenStack, it's a bit different. It's no longer like a viral project, like some of these new projects that come along, and thousands of pull requests being opened. So it's good that we don't have this issue right now. But nevertheless, to avoid this AI slop, I think that as Bowser's project for OpenStack agentic workflows covers this case, but also, like I would say, to protect ourselves from these new contributions that follow unexpected, even like processes, right, that are not in line with our OpenStack processes. It would be helpful to update the contributing guideline, of course, but also make sure that any new contributor is pointed to that, and also have some additional guidelines about understanding the code, how to actually use the AI agent when learning about OpenStack code, for example, which people just vibe coding, right? Starting an agent and thinking they know everything because they're convinced about what it is telling them. So I'll end that here. I'm especially interested in some of the other experiences people have. I know, like initially, I was disgusted by the AI bloat, but then I've seen inside this what appeared initially as bloat with like worthwhile fixes and especially vulnerability fixes and so on. And so I see the benefit in using AI.
Okay, Sylvain.
Yeah, so there are, I mean, I don't want to dive into too much details. There are lots of points that you mentioned. I will try to summarize them. Basically, my personal vision is that not of us can use LLMs. That's basically opt-in. If people want to use LLM, cool. The main point is that, as it was said in DITPAD, we have an AI policy for generating code and for explaining what we do. But the main concern is about the AI slope. And I guess most of us, myself as well, is definitely afraid of AI slope because, for example, if you use LLMs at the moment, maybe the answers from the LLMs, if you ask for OpenStack, are wrong. So that's why, for example, for myself, I created a new project for it, for just a POC, for verifying whether if I was able to provide a specific context, it was better or not. But that said, again, let's not discuss about that, not about any projects. The main concern here is whether, I will say, whether we are okay to say, okay, because of the AI slope, maybe we should be discussing how we could be able to help the LLMs, even if it's opt-in. That's basically it. And then how to do it. That's the first point. The second point I asked for that is about, like for me, for example, sometimes I'm using LLMs for reviewing some code, but my LLM doesn't directly provide my comments. I look at what the LLM says, and if I think as an overcore that what the LLM told me is okay, then I provide a comment. But the problem with the AI policy, and that's probably not a question here for the TC, but maybe for the board, is whether we'll have some specific AI policy as well for code review. That's the second point I wanted to discuss. And the last one is basically if you want to use LLMs, it's not only for code or for reviews, for generating a code or for generating a review. You can use LLMs for some other ways, like for example, for backporting some stuff or etc. And that's basically it for me. Sorry.
Julie, I think you're next.
Okay. From the board standpoint, are you seeking a policy around human interaction? Or are you seeking a don't do the thing that is creating extra load on infra?
That's a very good question. I don't know what to say. No, I think it's okay to have. Okay. I didn't want it to discuss that much, but the problem is that, for example, for me, if yeah. I let you finish, sorry. But I can't hear you. Sorry, Julia.
It's not that you. If Julia's talking, I can't hear it either.
I lost her.
Yeah, we might be running at load here. Julia, if you can hear us, maybe try joining again.
Okay.
Yeah, Jay is next.
Well, while we wait, why don't we take...
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in that the board is like the high-level legal. We're going to try and avoid regulating human interaction. Now, there is good practice that maybe we should suggest, but at the end of the day, I'd almost rather see the in-project practices be normalized as much as possible. So I don't necessarily think that's a board lever to pull to drive people to do use the tool this way in terms of code review and commenting, because it's human subjective. People can do. It's also really easy for people to just ignore at that level. People are going to always do what's most convenient and beneficial to their end goal, even if it's not beneficial to the community.
Agreed. I'm not sure if
thank
Jay
you.
is able to unmute.
I am.
Okay.
I'm here, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Cool. This speaks sort of to what Bowles was getting at. It's a little higher level than that. But like for me, when I think about where to draw the line, like you were asking about, we kind of have had good practice in code generation and marking the approved by or assisted by, generated by, whatnot. But like for me, I think an interesting place for us to draw the line as a community would be around the idea of an autonomous agent, right? That a kind of contribution guideline that basically states a contributor is 100% responsible for code they push, comments they push, regardless of where they came from. And two, that we don't permit automated commits of any kind into OpenStack, that it has to be flow through a human. I think that, I mean, the DCO stuff is all foundation legally stuff, but like from my perspective, that's the part that I want to ensure. I want to make sure that there's a human in the loop at all times, and that at no point in time do we let an LLM off the hook to go mislead a new contributor, or maybe give someone a correct but useless level of review on a new change, or things like that. Like there's a lot of like social interactions in our community. It's important, especially for newer contributors. And if we pull in any level of automation to interact with those people, whether it be code review agents, automated commits, whatnot, then I think we're doing ourselves a massive disservice and are putting our project in a place to be replaced by vibe coded solutions in 5 or 10 years, because our value is the fact that we have people here who've worked for years, decades, whatnot, on building clouds, and we need those people in the loop, maintaining and using their expertise, rather than trying to find a way to go faster at any cost.
So I'll jump in. The policy explicitly says a human must be in the loop, and that mechanism is using the DCO as well, where the human does it, because ultimately, while there is the technical capability to have an agent commit, there's no legal meaning behind that. To go back to like another community that's adjacent to us, Kubernetes, quite literally, the email that went out, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, quite literally said an AI cannot legally agree to an agreement. That's the same interpretation that the board had 2 years ago. So I just want to make sure that we're not heading down that path. And the policy as it is today basically is behind that. Now, could we revise the wording? Absolutely. Happy to bring that up and drive that forward if we want it to be more specific. But if anyone's taking the existing high-level policy on the legal side and interpreting that they can do fully automated end-to-end feature submission, the answer is absolutely no.
So this is the point I had to raise for to comment on as well. So can I just go quick? If you read the DCO, it says, I hereby certify that this contribution is under the particular license, but the contribution happens at the point you push it to the code review system. Not at the point you do the commit, but at the point you're actually doing the Git review or submitting it into the project itself. That is the thing that must be human done. So like, I'm completely fine with writing the tool, but you should be reading it. And at the point that you decide as a human that I am pushing this, you are certifying that everything that has been agreed to is correct and you followed all the policies that you would have done if you'd written it by hand. It's that actual push that I think we need to stop an agent doing without the human in the loop. Everything up to that point is fine, but that's when you're agreeing to everything that has been signed off by you, but your key, everything that's in the commit message.
I think that there might be a slightly different interpretation, but I could agree that could be an interpretation. I kind of take it as you've made a commit, you now have an entry in a log. Whether you submit that to a code review system or you keep it as a fork, you're still kind of bound by that.
So that's the thing.
So
if you take the licenses, so the Apache license and the GPL, they only take effect at distribution. So the terms of the license that you're contributing to don't have to take effect until you actually do the distribution. That's why I'm taking that read of it. Now we can get legal to review that specific sense because obviously I'm not a lawyer. That's
no, I agree, and I think
yeah.
To be specific, I think that thread, the idea has come up in discussions in the past, and I think the lawyers have viewed it as at the commit. But it could be time to rehab that discussion.
I think we had Sylvain next.
So I'm more interested.
Just a sec, Greg.
I'm more interested in the practicality. Oh, I thought.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Just I just wanted to. Oh, sorry. Who's next?
Go ahead.
That's fine. I mean, if Gregors wants to discuss, sure. Okay, then just one very quick point. I'm just adding it in the Etherpad. Yeah, I think the A policy is currently nice, but saying that we generally expect contributions to be made by a human taking an action, maybe rephrasing it. Of course, I'm not good at English verbing, so I would say basically for the policy it should be like, we want basically the contributors. I mean, basically, we will be saying something like, I would rather prefer to say that if contributors use LLMs, that's their problems, that's their usage. But basically, if they are, I would say it's for them. Like, we don't want to have directly, for example, new discussions directly by the LLMs. Modifying it, but okay, that's basically it for me.
Yeah, great.
I just wanted to say maybe that's also why I tried to put a couple of examples to other projects because I'm more interested in the practicality of it. So maybe some of the people have experiences like that. That's my proposal was to fix the contributing guidelines, but maybe other people have other experiences from other projects about how to lessen the burden, right? And maybe the TC could be the place, right, to create the default guidelines of what to expect, so that even we could make a push to other projects, README or whatever, right, to actually make some default changes in all of the projects.
Yeah, I'll take that specific question. Thanks, Greg. And round it back. Yes, we have been slow on publishing these contribution guidelines within the OpenStack documentation itself. We have been referring to the board's policy just to make sure that folks are aware that they should be annotating their commits based on how they've used their AI assistants and so on, and also on the specifics on the copyrights associated with the submission and so on. So we've been pointing folks at it, but probably it's hard for somebody to come find it, right? It's unless, because they're coming in reading OpenStack contributor docs and then assuming that's it. We're not really looking at much else, maybe not in the open infra legal pages. So yes, we'll take that feedback on the documentation. I would probably ask for volunteers. I think, Greg, you started putting up a patch. That's the sort of thing that I think we'd like. If even if we're adding a pointer, starting there is a good place. Second, on making our own project specific guidelines, this is the place where we're this is a good start. I mean, we don't want to enshrine something into the documentation that's coming from top down. I think from within the TC there was a consensus that project teams are starting to see patterns that can inform us much better at the TC level as to how to actually prevent abuse and actually promote useful things. And so, I mean, throughout this week, there have been lots of discussions. I mean, namely, I think Ironic, Neutron, Swift, and other teams. There have been numerous discussions that sprinkled all over the Etherpads. I'm looking forward to seeing that funnel through and just get digested and let the feedback come up to the TC around what policy should be or in terms of guidelines. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, who do we have next?
Should we maybe talk about automated AI reviews, right? So not posted by a person, but reviews that could help sort out. I'm sure, like, we probably don't, as a foundation, doesn't have money for that, but I wonder what people think.
We just sorry, maybe.
Yeah, Sylvain, let's get Julia's opinion.
We do not have money allocated for that. There's a spectrum of responses from yes, want this, and personally, I'm in the I would love to see something better than nothing out there. But the spectrum runs from I am worried about the AI giving the wrong advice or outdated advice to basically just the agent being off base or having bad context. And I think those are all very valid risks. Truthfully, there's a side effect that concerns me with people using agents to do code review, which is basically amplification of load upon the infrastructure. Because I personally have had patches, and I've had 3 different people come to me and go, hey, I ran your patch through Claude or whatever tool, and here's some data or results, or here's what thought. And it's like, that's, as a contributor, that's not helpful. I mean, it's cool, but what load did that incur? And did it make Clark and Jeremy cry? Which neither are things I want. So I think ultimately it's like, I see there's being value there. I think if we can shift some of the burden, that'd be awesome. But where do we find that comfort? And that is the discussion that the TC should be having.
Yeah, I definitely agreeing with Julia. Personally, I think we are not yet there for code review using LLMs. Even if we're passing context, basically, I'm still afraid of AI slop. I at least I tested that. That's nice if people can opt into it and test by themselves. Yes, for sure this works. But having it like automatically enforced and generated without the help of the human, I don't think we're yet there. And to me, I would rather see the opportunity of running LLMs for other things but code review, to be honest, or code generation, because there are reasons why using LLM for generating code actually takes you more time than the original time that you thought if you are starting to write that code. At least that happened to me a couple of times. But that's why I see 2 different discussions here. The first discussion is about what kind of experiences would like to accept for LLMs on the project side. Maybe there are some experiences that third-party CI jobs could be doing. I'm not talking about upstream infra for multiple reasons. That's the first maybe discussion we should be thinking. The second discussion is, even if we still see some good reasons or good user experiences by LLMs, I'm pretty sure, and we touched that during the board meeting, I'm sure that we basically need to direct the LLMs with some context. We discussed that as well on the Nova room. I think we basically agreed on some direction for the Nova project about how to help the LLMs to find the context. That one I would also like to have it discussed on the TC at the TC level, because I think this could benefit not only for the Nova project but also for the other projects if we start finding a way to have that. But again, I don't want, honestly, I'm saying that because I used it a couple of times. We are months away, if not years away, from trusting the LLMs for both code generation and code review. That's nice, because for me, that's giving me more context very quickly. So indeed, that's nice, but I still need to be like a Nova core, and I still need to understand exactly what the LLM is giving me before like directly proxying it to guide, because I'm pretty sure like 50% of time, what the LLM will provide me is either unrelated or at least wrong. That's it for me.
So I actually appreciate that a lot. That's a really good segue into what I was going to say, because like code review is not a task that we check off, right? Like there are certain things as a community that we just got to do. We care that they're done. Doesn't matter what. Code review is not one of those tasks. Code review is probably the most important thing we do as a community. Code review is, if you're not a core, you're building up knowledge about the code to become a core. You're understanding the changes that are happening to your project this release, that maybe if you're a more senior person on the project, you can think feature A plus feature B plus feature C might expose a gap in our performance or whatever. Like the knowledge dissemination between the reviewer and the person pushing the code is the entire point of code review beyond almost anything else. It's not this code must be this good to clear. It is, as a team, if we're going to accept maintenance of this code, we need to have at least 2 people who are senior on this project who've read it, who've internalized it, who understand it enough to raise their hand and say, I will maintain this approximately forever. And so like, I really dislike the way the conversations about code reviews are going, because I don't care if the LLM understands it correctly and you read it and they did it. I think the process of coming to that personal understanding is pretty important. And even beyond that, like let's set all of that to the side and let's say it's okay. Those of us who've used LLMs have experienced multiple times where we ask it to solve a problem and it zigs when we might have zagged. And so we spend a hell of a lot of time zigging, trying to make the LLM idea work instead of reeling it back in and making it go the other direction, right? Like this is sort of a thing where there's so much value in having a human who's unpolluted, who's unanchored to what an LLM is saying. Look at this code and say, does it make sense? Because I'll tell you what, almost every useful ironic feature, it looks nothing like what we thought it would at the very beginning. It's like we have a spec, we iterate on it, we maybe start writing it, we find a gap, we change it. Like hell, things change names like 3 times before they get implemented sometimes because we figure them out. And like, I kind of feel like some of these proposals feel like hitting the fast forward on that entire process. And like, we're really quickly going to crater the quality of OpenStack and the quality of our own expertise if we let the project go down that path.
So I have a valid contribution here in 2 forms. One, I think we should be separating the difference between the plus and minus to /workflow from code review assistance with a bot. To me, those are 2 completely different topics. I don't think a third-party CI or a review bot should maybe ever get the +W or +2 rights. But getting feedback in an automated way is a slightly different conversation. So in the Watcher project for the last 6 months, we've been running an experiment where I have been running a third-party CI that is an AI code review bot. And we discussed this in our PTG sessions, and we discussed in the team meetings about, can we try this out? Initially, it was you specifically commented, and it would run on your patch if you asked it for. Back in January, we made it run on every patch. A little bit later, it even got the ability to comment in line like the pep job. And it does it to a separate account that has a different name, that is very explicit that this is coming from a bot. And when I was doing this with the team, I was originally committing to, I will review everything that comes out of this and analyze it for you and say if this is a real thing or not, and take that feedback back. And I've been doing that like every month or so. I've gone through all of the review commits it's ever provided and actually fit the back into the criteria. And we were doing this as an experiment to see if it could actually catch the stuff that I would normally catch. And because it doesn't work on diffs, it uses Zool. So Zool prepares the repo exactly like it would be when it's merged. It reviews that code with the full context. It was able to find that we changed a function over here, and it broke something in a completely unrelated part of the code because we missed a place to update it. And it found that and pointed out, no, you are breaking this by making this incompatible change. It also found a number of other subtle bugs that if you just looked at the diff alone, you wouldn't have seen. So it was able to reason about the entire code base and highlight things that weren't necessarily obvious. Now, it's taken 8 months to get that thing to provide something that's kind of useful feedback. So I kind of agree. If you just take an off-the-shelf tool that doesn't know anything about your code base, it doesn't know how to find the review conventions, and you don't give it guidance, it can be not great at what it provides. If you invest the time into it, then it can actually give you some useful input. But that only works at the moment because my review capacity is currently larger than its review capacity, i.e. every single commit that it's going to comment on, I am also reviewing every single one of those, and I am giving my core guidance of like, is this correct and should you respond to it? And I agreed that with the team in advance, right? So we have had discussions of like, should we turn it off? Is it still useful? Like, do we end the experiment, that kind of thing, periodically in our meetings to make sure that it's not noise. But just sharing that there, because from my perspective, that's a third-party CI. It's a tool that we agreed as a team to try using to see if we could get benefit from. But it wasn't a conversation at the TC level because it didn't feel like something that the TC had to specifically legislate over. But I don't have that running on Nova because we don't have that conversation in Nova of, is that something we would like that? It could be manually triggered, but that was because I wanted specific cores to give me feedback on, is this even reliable? I've turned that off since. So now it only works on Watcher and Cyborg at the moment. But I can also turn it off entirely if that's what the TC would prefer. But it gave me an opportunity to get some experimentation with these tools and if they can provide some useful feedback. So.
Yeah, because time flies. I mean, that's a debate that we could have for a long time about whether code review is a nice skills to have. Again, to me, the most crucial discussion we should be having is, A, do we want to give more context to the LLMs for their knowledge? Like, for example, someone said, like, I think this was Fungi last hour, that was saying that, for example, Iran LLM, and it gave like wrong answers because the LLM was not exactly looking at what to look, because basically our docs are pretty stale. So I would rather want to discuss about that, whether we'll want to have some kind of agreement about the fact that, because that's opt-in, people will start using LLMs either way. Even if we don't want to, they will. They just won't tell us, but they will use LLMs. So I'd rather want us to basically try to see about what we could fix from a documentation point of view, because that also benefit for net new for contributors. And basically, like, just adding a way to route the LLMs about the existing docs that we have. Basically what we discussed at the Nova session. That's the first item I will want us to discuss. The second item is whether we all agree that even if code review and code generation are not probably, I would say, we are not yet in an agreement about those. I will say that we could benefit from other pros, I will say. That could be, I don't know, for bug triage, that could be bug triage, that could be bug triage, that could be backward, that could upstream backward. That's basically that's the two segue discussions I would want us to have before we finish.
This is a good segue to that discussion, so that works. One thing we need to keep in mind as we talk about these patterns and discuss the possibilities of baking these tools into our model is we are a little bit of an echo chamber here. We do have a lot of people who share a lot of the same values and stuff, and including AI, I think we're all somewhere in like the middle of the bell curve as far as AI trust. None of us are really extreme one way or the other. Maybe a couple people here or there are really hard push or really hard anti. But there is a large open source community, which at this point is completely avoiding things that are touched by LLMs. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form we should necessarily cater to the people at either extreme. However, it's worth knowing that this is not a free win. There will be people who will come in and see Claude.md or agents.md on an OpenStack project and immediately choose to use something else as a result. There are people who will see our use of LLMs and will see that as a sentinel of low quality because of how badly LLM has been implemented in some even previously trusted projects. So we do need to be very, very careful about the people who aren't here to speak today, who we might be walling off from our community semi-permanently by coming down some of these paths. And again, I don't think we should cater to the most extreme people on either side by any means, but I wanted to make sure to give a voice to that other side here. Those people who maybe would shut the door on OpenStack without even saying hello because they see that we utilize LLMs and have been burned by that in the past. And this is not a theoretical thing. I know multiple people in open source nowadays who, as soon as they open up the repository, if they see Claude.md, they close it. And so like, just keep a mind out that we're already a pretty insular community, and that heavy use of AI, especially the more integrated it is into the tools that everyone has to use, the more walls we're building up against those folks who might not be as big of a fan of the use of LLMs. And at least in my experience, they tend to shade more toward the infrastructure sysadmin old school side, which are kind of the people who we are working with a lot anyway. At least, I guess I'm ironic, so I deal with a lot of the grizzled people racking hardware more than maybe some of the other projects. But when I think about OpenStack users, I think about a large Venn diagram overlap with the people who have some of the biggest problems with LLMs. So I wanted to make sure there was a voice given to that. Again, I don't know what the action is other than just make sure to keep that in your mind whenever we're deciding whatever policy comes out.
That's a very valid concern. Thanks, Jay, for raising it, because that's exactly why I was definitely afraid of the use of LLMs. I was personally afraid of the use of LLMs. That's why instead of I had the chance because I had possibilities to test the LLMs. So basically, I thought about that, and that's why I thought it was more important, at least to say, let's not try to do like this magic 500 lines of agents MD that will say this and that. No. We only have documentation, but the LLMs don't know about our own documentation. So let's try to find them a way for that. And at least for OpenStack, I would say I would rather prefer to have user experience with LLMs, not about, again, code generation and code review, because as you said, other projects were having problems. I would rather say, okay, we want to help you, like we want to help our contributors because now we have LLMs. That's just a different way to say about LLMs. But yeah, maybe some policy, maybe some governance policy. That's a good question. How we can write that? Actually, that's a very good question. I don't know what the solution about that. Maybe a governance point, maybe something else. But voilà.
So I just want to highlight that you raised a very good point, and to kind of echo that point, we are also, most of us are software engineers, and when we talk about LLMs, we think, how can I write software faster? How can I get that quality of the software faster? And I think we should probably be taking a step back, because on some level, yes, we can do software things faster, but that's only that's like an insular response and improvement for our jobs themselves. At some point, what would be the most ideal thing? Not improving our workflows in ways that add negligible value for higher load or driving people to burnout, but maybe, hey, an MCP server that could actually drive OpenStack as a user is probably way more valuable than arguing over code review. And I would highly encourage folks to consider that as a possibility. And I did take a brief look at some of the models, the context stuff, and I was like, oh, cool. There's a lot here that normally wouldn't be thought of. But maybe we need to take a step back from even the software engineer mindset and go, what does the user need? How does the user interact? And that's a parity shift, and I get it. And I just think it brings value to make that shift. Jay?
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I had completely forgotten about this, but I actually had a conversation with some OpenStack operators recently about how they are actively having to fight back against their users using LLMs to generate like bad OpenStack commands. And we actually had a brief conversation about the possibility of a real MCP server for OpenStack to give LLMs a way in. Like, it's tough, because as someone who's done operations before, I don't like the idea of using LLMs to drive infrastructure. However, if people are going to do it, having a proper harness in place is one really good way to allow guardrails to be written to sort of help mitigate that. So I think that's a very good point to bring up. And maybe something even, harkening back to the user survey, maybe that's a note we should stick in for the user survey, of asking if people are, mashing up their AI with their OpenStack at all for infrastructure management.
So I guess we actually had different views for what this topic would be. Originally, when I brought up on the mailing list, I wanted to have the conversation about, should we build a community repo where we have skills, and whether or not there should be any AI-related files like agentMD in the Git repos themselves. Though the C content at the moment is about, well, if we have that repo, which we've temporarily created, but we could delete, what should be inside it, which is a slightly different conversation. I'm okay with having either. But yeah, that was...
Yeah, I don't think we'll have the time for discussing that. Again, my main concern is maybe not about discussing about the project if you have 2 minutes. This is about whether, again, that's what I wanted to discuss, but I guess we won't have time for it. Maybe discussing it on a TC meeting then. About whether, for example, as I said, whether we should be having contexts creating context. Each of the service projects should be creating context for LLMs by agents MD. Sorry, this is definitely quick. It could be taking like 30 minutes for discussing it. We are discussing in the Etherpad whether we could be drafting at TC goal. I even don't know what will be the end goal. It's just a thought. But yeah, that's the first point I wanted to discuss, but we won't have time. And again, the second point was about which kind of help we could be creating for contributors that are not like either Nova course, either experts from OpenStack, and they just want to do this and that with OpenStack. I heard about the MCP server. I think I saw some OpenStack MCP servers. If you haven't seen them, those are already there. So that's why I'm afraid, as a reminder, even if the TC doesn't accept LLM usage, people will still use LLMs. And that's my main concern. I want us to basically support LLM usage, even if you don't use LLMs by yourself. And that's where I think it's more important to discuss as a team. But again, we won't have that time. About the project, if people want to look at the project exists. We have a few folks here contributing for it. Let's not discuss that now. It's definitely another point. By the way, there is TC change. There's a governance change for it about whether the project should be related to the tagged SIG. Definitely, we'll discuss that on the TC meeting as well, right? Because this is a governance change. So probably next TC meeting, we will be discussing that either way. Voilà. Anyway, we don't have that much time.
I'm back, but I just added my comment to the Etherpad. It was about MCP. It's not major.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that people have issues with having interactive OpenStack. I'm a little surprised that they have issue with the OpenStack CLI, because I've actually got it to, in my DevStack mode, obviously I'm an expert of how this stuff works, but I've got it to like spin up VMs, test different scenarios using it to read the help text that come out of the tool. And I found it's been, even out in MCP, LMs are usually pretty good at taking a CLI and understanding how a CLI works based on its help text. So maybe there could be a skill that the SDK team would work on or something that would help it use it more efficiently. But I don't think we should be necessarily investing too much into a official OpenStack MCP at this point. But if people want to build that, like, fine. But yeah, I don't know. I think this will naturally evolve. Go ahead.
So my understanding of the use case for that is more around, I'm Bob and I have a certain role. That role has access to do a bunch of stuff. I want to use my credentials with an LLM to do things in OpenStack, but I don't want to let that OpenStack run wild. So if you had something like an MCP server in the middle, you're giving the user control over what that's actually allowed to do. And that to me is kind of the bigger issue, is like putting it inside a box that doesn't involve the person building the box to have access to adjust keystone roles. That to me would be the killer feature of an OpenStack MCP server, not a matter of you can't do it with a CLI or something else.
So it's a policy layer.
Yeah, it's more about being able as a user to build that fence around what that tool is actually going to be able to do. And if you give it OpenStack credentials, it can go extract the token and go do whatever the hell your user can do on the cloud. And I don't know about you, I've had more and more trouble with Claude trying to do things that I've told it not to do lately. So I'm getting more and more nervous about stuff like this as time goes on.
Yeah, the use cases I've used this for is I have a doc that says you could do it this way. And I've got the MCP to actually take the OpenStack client and actually create a Cyborg device profile and actually see if what we have in the doc actually works, right? And I've reviewed it as it's doing that, and use it in me just testing specific things. And I found it's pretty good if you give it that kind of direction. But if you give it an end-to-end task of please boot me a Ironic node through the Nova API that has this, flavor with this particular size, I don't know if I'd trust that. So if you're very specific and say, here's the example, please make sure it works, it can do that.